Goju Wakana is an orphan raised by his grandfather, who's known for his passion for crafting Hina dolls. After seeing his grandfather's most beautiful creation, Wakana's aspiration as a craftsman began. However, his fear of facing another misogynistic opinion about his love for dolls caused him to hide his hobby from the society. During their breakfast, his grandfather scolds him for staying up all night while making Hina dolls. Wakana points out that he hasn't mastered the skills of making a Hina doll's face unlike his grandfather, and the least he can proficiently do is make perfect clothes. Regardless of his cheerfulness when it comes to crafting dolls, his grandfather still cannot hide the fact that he's worried about Wakana's life in school. Upon hearing this, Wakana had no choice but to lie and say that he is doing well and has a lot of friends. In bringing up this topic, he tries to find a way to make friends in school despite his social fears. Kitagawa Marin suddenly falls on his table, and after noticing an unwashed ink on his arm, he nervously shoves her hand, which made her walk away after noticing that he was uncomfortable. From a distance, Wakana watches Marin and her friends, overhearing their conversation about her recent rejection by a guy who ridiculed her favorite anime keychain. At that point, Wakana starts envying Marin's life, a totally opposite environment where no matter what she does or says, everyone still accepts her for who she is. As the class ended, Wakana volunteered to do the classroom chores alone, thinking that it'd keep his classmates from trying to make a conversation for his sake. However, Marin, who's also scheduled to clean their classroom, suddenly barges in and starts cleaning up with him. After hearing that their groupmates dumped everything on Wakana, Marin scolds him, saying that he shouldn't let it be and that he should start vocalizing what he truly feels. It's been several days since Marin stated those words, but they still bother Wakana. His grandfather arrived with a bandage after Wakana hurt his own fingers, but as he tried to start sewing again, the machine was already broken. On the next day, Wakana uses one of their school's sewing facilities, but ends up having an awkward encounter as Marin arrives and sees his affection for his favorite Hina doll. Instead of disgust, Marin expressed her genuine compliment for Wakana's talent and even asked to see his favorite doll. This is the first time someone has said that his doll is beautiful, and it made him happy, but shock overcame him as Marin started taking off her clothes. After she asked Wakana to look, Marin revealed that she's trying to cosplay a character, but can't make the dress herself. Wakana starts critiquing Marin's dress and expresses how bad she is in sewing. After seeing her embarrassed face, Wakana immediately apologizes for his rudeness. However, Marin is not really mad and even asks him to help her make her dream of cosplaying her favorite anime character into reality. Regardless of the fact that this will be Wakana's first time making a human-sized cloth, he agrees, determined to accept the request from the very first person who appreciated his passion, aside from his grandfather. After knowing that Shizuku, the character that Marin is trying to cosplay, is from a harem dating sim, Wakana began to have his doubts, as this information also indicates that, as someone who will craft the costume, he will have no other choice but to be exposed in the same game. At first, Wakana thought that Marin was playing a prank to test him, but after seeing how she enjoys talking about her favorite character in the game, he realized that she is not joking. Instead of judging Marin for being obsessed with a game that contains explicit scenes of women, Wakana felt elated, knowing that he finally has someone he can relate to. After Marin shows Wakana a sewing guidebook for cosplay costumes, the two set up a plan to buy the necessary materials on the next weekday. As Wakana lays down in his cushion bed, his grandfather announces that their shop will be closed for the next day because his grandfather will set out to buy a new sewing machine. Wakana calmly nods, still caught up with everything that has happened within a day, and despite the challenges that he may face, he still wants to do his best and somehow help Marin achieve her dream. On the next day, Marin suddenly arrives at Wakana's house, saying that she's too excited to wait for the first weekday and decided to find his residence by looking up their family business on the internet. This made Wakana nervous, especially since his grandfather hasn't arrived yet. After handing Wakana a paper bag containing cheesecakes, Marin immediately enters his house and heads to his room, making him anxious as this is the first time someone, aside from his grandfather, has roamed around his private space. Marin decides to initiate their first step by taking her body measurements. Although it is embarrassing, Wakana had to ask her to take her clothes off to attain the perfect measurements. Marin anticipated the situation and informed Wakana that there's nothing to worry about because she's wearing a swimsuit. After several attempts, Wakana finally pulled his senses together as he realized that there's no need to feel embarrassed if he wants to attain a perfect crafting result. But no matter how hard he tried, measuring a woman's feet and bust is really too much for someone who has never had any contact with a real woman. Finally, the last measurement they need is Marin's inseam. But when Wakana starts to measure her, his finger touched her pantsuit without him knowing, and this makes her flustered. After the challenging body measurement has ended, Wakana asks if Marin has any other brochures containing detailed information about the cosplay character's attire. Marin hands 2 volumes of the game to Wakana for reference, and as sundown arrives, his grandfather barges into his grandson's room, excited to relay that a new sewing machine has arrived. But the sight of Wakana, who's playing a rated SPG game with a serious face, left the old man speechless. Clueless of the real reason why Wakana's playing an erotic game and is even taking notes, His grandfather closes his room door with a lot of things going around his head. After having an explicit wet dream with Marin, Wakana wakes up embarrassed by his favorite Hina doll and tries to find the courage to face Marin in school after his unsettling dream. As expected, Wakana met her in the hallway and had his first conversation with her friends, who greeted him nicely before they left. Wakana smiled, glad that she is treating him the same even in public, but after witnessing Wakana and Marin's closeness, students immediately made negative comments about him and his possible relationship with Marine. This triggered his social anxieties, and after hearing this, he started to avoid Marine, afraid of what other people might think of him. When Marine is about to approach him, Wakana runs away, but she finds him easily, asking him why he's avoiding her. Wakana tells her that people think they are dating, which made Marin tease him that they should be, flustering him. She then asks him to accompany her to shop for Shizuku's costume. Using Wakana's knowledge, shopping for the right materials became an easy task, but the only problem was the material's price. In order to perfectly copy Shizuku's costume, a fabric that costs twice as much as the regular price is needed. Wakana deems this a problem, but Marin shoved an ATM card around, saying that he should buy anything he needs regardless of the item's price. The perfect wig that's identical to Shizuku's hair comes after, and as they arrived in a luxurious wig shop, the alluring quality and colors of the products amazed Wakana. As they discussed the right color and length for the hair, Marin scheduled another errand to a salon, where they'd trim the chosen wig to achieve the right length for Shizuku's bob cut. Marin expressed her gratitude for Wakana's assistance before paying at the counter, and this brought a smile to his face. Still, the last and final store that they have to go through is a store for garters and stockings. After seeing how embarrassed Wakana is, Marin peeks from the fitting room and shows him the garterized underwear that she's wearing, making him scold her with his loud, embarrassed voice. In a ramen shop, a few adults who mistakenly thought that Wakana and Marin were a couple overheard them talking about the explicit game where Wakana obliviously mentioned ejaculating, while Marin was smiling as they passed through the elders who had shocked expressions. On their way home, Marin showed Wakana her favorite cosplayer named Juju, and he recalled his childhood, where he first saw a Hina doll and immediately fell in love with it. Wakana stated that he can say the word beautiful only if he really means it, and Marin didn't have any negative thoughts, respecting his opinion. As they carried on, a stall selling meat rolls caught Marin's attention, and she happily ate as they walked through an overpass. Marin stopped walking and apologized for making Wakana play her favorite game and for all the trouble that he has gone through with her, but the warm ambiance immediately changed after Wakana refused Marin's offer to bite on her meat rolls, thinking that he possibly thinks that she is a glutton. Marin bids him farewell after saying the event she wants to join while impersonating Shizuku is in 2 weeks. When Wakana realized this after she left, he gasped, wondering if he could finish the costume before the event. Given that this is his first attempt to create a cloth for a real woman, Wakana fears that he might not make it within 2 weeks. Wakana doesn't want to disappoint Marin, but the process of creating Shizuku's insanely detailed dress is a challenge that he has to overcome. His grandfather got too stunned after seeing that his grandson bought a woman's stocking, causing the old man to fall from the stairs. After Wakana immediately brings his grandfather to the nearest hospital, he calls Miyori, his cousin, who immediately rushes after hearing what happened to their grandfather. The doctor advises them to let their grandfather rest for 2 weeks, so Miyori takes her grandfather with her to their residence, where he would be taken care of properly. The sudden occurrence took a toll on Wakana's focus, especially when he remembers that their exams are upcoming as he walks with Marin through the halls. With his grandfather's state, upcoming exams, and being in charge of their family business, Wakana will sure have trouble inserting a schedule to craft Marin's costume. Still, he did his best to fit everything within his schedule, even without resting. Their last exam finally ends, but Marin notices that he is still undone and is occupied with several thoughts in his head. When Marin's friend approaches her, she fails to catch Wakana, as he immediately runs away and heads to their home. Marin follows and brings him food, but doesn't see any lights in their home, which makes Marin assume that he went to his grandfather. While on the other hand, Wakana finally wakes up inside his messy room, breaking down from everything he's carrying on his back. Now that Wakana's strength, his grandfather, isn't around, the young man thinks that he will fail at everything, but Marin suddenly barges into his head, and despite his unstable emotions, Wakana gets up and continues to make Marin's costume with tears in his eyes. The next day, Marin receives a message from Wakana saying that the costume is finished, but Wakana has to go to sleep first. After finally seeing her dress, Marin's face filled with excitement, but given Wakana's worn-out state, she immediately asks if he thought that she is really determined to participate in the upcoming cosplay event. It turns out that Marin is actually eager to wait until the dress was finished, despite not being able to attend the upcoming cosplay event. Upon hearing this, Wakana stumbles on the floor, relieved that he has more time to fix some details, which makes Marin cry and guilty of not clearing things with him and making his current situation harder. Wakana approaches the crying damsel and cheers Marin up, asking her to fit the dress. Wakana fixes her hair while Marin does her makeup, as they both proceed to make the Shizuku impersonation perfect. After seeing spare lashes from Wakana, Marin panics, thinking that these belong to his girlfriend, but he immediately clears up the misunderstanding by saying that the false eyelashes belong to his dolls. After all the preparations that they made, everything pays off after Marin put the costume on, looking exactly like Shizuku, indicating that she can participate in the upcoming cosplay event. Marin can't stop praising Wakana for doing such a great job and asks him to take a picture of her, but after taking a shot, he notices that Marin and Shizuku's personalities are the total opposite. After several attempts, the two finally captured perfect photos of Marin portraying Shizuku's look and expressions. Marin immediately created a cosplay account named Marine, posted her pictures, and even asked Wakana to accompany her to the cosplay event. The event arrives swiftly, and Marin feels excited as she holds her debut as a cosplayer with such amazing impersonators around, while on the other hand, Wakana, who's not used to being in a crowded place, is stoned and overwhelmed. To ease his stiffness, Marin takes him to a spot with a calmer ambience, where photographers started to notice Marin as they lined up to take some shots of her. From a distance, Wakana feels great as he watches Marin enjoy the event dressed as her favorite character, and suddenly realizes that since the costume is finally done, he and Marin wouldn't have any reason to meet again. Marin, who panics that he could have left her, immediately rushes as she sees Wakana nearby, saying that her costume is about to tear off as she wears a bigger brassiere cup to achieve Shizuku's size, but it comes out as a wrong decision as Wakana made the boob bags inclined with Marin's normal chest size. Wakana brings her somewhere to cool off and helps Marin feel at ease by giving her cooling pads and towels to wipe off her drenching sweat. Being exposed to some of Marin's bare skin makes Wakana uncomfortable, and even wiping her back with a towel is a huge challenge for a total shut-in like him. After successfully fixing Marin's dress, she immediately invites Wakana to come back to the plaza and look for the woman she suddenly bailed on after feeling dizzy because of the heat. Marin kindly asks the lady to take some shots of her before she goes home, which makes the lady happy. A wind gushes through Marin's skirt, revealing her inner garment, but Wakana and the lady are stunned after realizing that Marin isn't worried about her exposed underpants, but the taken photo where she isn't looking at the camera. After changing her clothes, Marin and Wakana head home on a train. Marin expresses her gratitude to Wakana and asks about his idea of who will she cosplay next. Upon hearing this, Wakana unconsciously smiles, as this means that he'll spend more time with her, but Marin catches his smiling face and starts to tease him. The two immediately devises some plans for Marin's next cosplay, while Wakana unconsciously compliments her for being beautiful while cosplaying Shizuku. This causes Marin to remember how Wakana used to tell her that he would only compliment something or someone as beautiful if he really meant it, which makes her blush as she stares at him, who is already fast asleep. Marin volunteers to wash her costume, while Wakana carefully reads the washing instructions written in a cosplay manual, and the words that Wakana stated on the train still linger in Marin's mind. On the other hand, Miyori is on her way to take their grandfather back to his home. As his grandfather arrives in their shop, the shocking appearance of a woman with Wakana causes the old man to raise his voice, but after explaining everything, his grandfather apologizes to Marin for misunderstanding her. Marin finally acknowledges that she's head over heels for Wakana, but the situation became awkward after her stomach growls, indicating her hunger. After serving some dishes with Marin, Wakana discovered that her mother has already passed away, and that she lives alone, apart from her father who's working far from her. Wakana's grandfather asks if Marin is having a proper meal, and she shows them a photo of her usual meal bought from a convenience store, which brings a hilarious expressions to Wakana and the old man's faces. Wakana's grandfather invites Marin to have dinner in their house from that point on, and Wakana takes her to the terminal after their meal. On the train, Marin scolds herself for not pulling herself together even with a normal conversation with Wakana. The next day, Wakana's grandfather encounters a drenched young girl taking shelter under their shop. He takes the young girl in, thinking that she is Wakana's friend. But after Wakana hears everything before the old man set out, he gets confused because Marin is at work and immediately thinks that it could be a scammer aiming to rob their house. As Wakana opens the bathroom's door, a girl's naked body is completely exposed after tripping in front of him. He immediately apologizes to Inui, who's actually older than him, and decides to put the embarrassing memory aside as he shows the Hina dolls to her. While looking at the dolls, Inui eventually becomes impatient, saying that she came for a cosplay costume. Although Wakana refuses, saying that he's not doing cosplay costumes for business, Inui blackmails him using the bathroom incident and reveals her identity as Juju. After hearing her cosplay name, he immediately recalls that the cosplayer named Juju is one of Marin's favorites. A few days ago, Inui followed Marine to the cosplay event and eventually found out that Wakana was the one who sewed the dress. During their discussion, Marine arrives at Wakana's house and freaks out after seeing her favorite cosplayer. This time, Inui wants to cosplay a character named Shion, a cool character known in Princess Lily anime, who's also one of Marine's favorite characters. There are several ready-made costumes sold online, but Inui cannot find one that fits her body perfectly, so she is determined to rely on Wakana's skills after seeing the photos uploaded by Marin cosplaying Shizuku. As the three spend more time together, Inui undeniably admits to herself that she likes Marin's personality as a cosplayer, and she asks Marin and Wakana if they are dating. Wakana immediately denies it and avoids further questioning, but Marin sheepishly smiles in a corner after knowing that he doesn't have a girlfriend, confusing Inui with her flustered face. After Inui proclaims that she's planning to rent a studio for her cosplay photos, Marin immediately becomes excited as she imagines her favorite cosplay idol in action, and immediately offers to pay half of the studio fee if Inui allows Marin and Wakana to tag along. If Marin pays half of the studio's rental, Inui could save a lot and ensure her costume's quality, so she immediately agrees in guise of looking in denial. Wakana still prefers to watch the anime in order to properly observe Shion's characteristics, including every detail of the character's attire. After hearing this, Marin instantly volunteers to let Wakana borrow her complete series of the said show. While checking Wakana's recent face design for a Hina doll, his grandfather praises him, saying that he is doing well, and permits Wakana to come to Marin's unit and take the DVDs. After he arrives in Marin's unit, she rushes to open the door, despite wearing a thin lingerie, which immediately makes Wakana blush. Marin invites him to watch some of the series episodes in her bedroom, and Wakana's tension immediately fades after seeing her unladylike room, filled with photos of Shizuku everywhere. Wakana watches in peace while Marin is containing her excitement, thinking that she's spending a home date with him, the man she likes. But then again, the ambiance is ruined by Marin's growling stomach. Upon hearing this, Wakana immediately offers to cook something for her, trying to dodge Marin's usual convenience meal, but she insists on taking over the kitchen. As Marin goes to the kitchen, she notices that she forgot to wear a bra. However, she disregards it, thinking that Wakana didn't notice, and starts cooking an omelet rice, which turns out opposite from what she is expecting. From the outside, the omelet has an unpleasant appearance, but Wakana genuinely compliments how Marin wisely used the spices, and overall, the omelets taste good. But Wakana thinks that it is only a fried rice. After watching some of the series episodes, the two decides to commence their plan to create Inui's cosplay. Wakana sends a detailed information about the costume to Inui, and asks about how the veteran cosplayer can alter her eye's shape. Through a video call, Inui shows him a cosplay tape and teaches Wakana some useful tips, such as improving Marine's complexion by using an upgraded camera instead of a smartphone. After Inui mentioned that her sister is the one who takes her photos, Wakana immediately asks if he could have her sister teach him how to use a camera. Upon meeting Shinju, Inui's sister, Wakana and Marin are stunned to see that the middle schooler that they think is a small kid turns out to be a young girl who physically looks like a grown-up. Initially, Inui didn't have a plan to become a star cosplayer as she only wanted to cosplay for herself, but because of Shinju's efforts in creating and managing her cosplay account, the cosplayer named Juju became renowned on the internet. Shinju starts to share her knowledge of capturing the right angles using a camera, but Marin suddenly asks how she would feel about trying to cosplay personally, and this question brings an unknown awkwardness after Shinju declines, saying that she only wants to take photos for her sister. The DSLR's price blows up Wakana's mind after he looked it up on the internet, but Marin laughs, saying that she'll save up to buy a DSLR camera soon. The next day, the four visits the studio, which is set up in an abandoned hospital. Marin and Shinju immediately enter the venue and roam around, unbothered by the frightening ambience, while Wakana tries to comfort the sulking Inui, who's frightened in a corner. While he tries to comfort the young lady, Inui reminisces about her dream as a child, to become a strong and dazzling magical girl. Inui knew that her dream was impossible, but way back in middle school, she saw a beautiful cosplay costume, bought it, and despite not wearing any makeup on, she felt genuine happiness as she had become one step closer to her dream. Knowing that Shion's character is very important to Inui, Wakana immediately asks why Inui entrusted him with creating her costume. Inui finally admits that she fell in love with Wakana's craft at first sight, and she became determined that she had to wear a costume made by the same person who sewed Marin's dress. After hearing everything, Wakana is touched, realizing how his grandfather must have felt when he first adored a hyena doll from his shop. But Wakana's suddenly odd movements scares Inui, as this is the first time a boy touches her hand, and immediately falls unconscious. A day went by, and after their class, Marin approaches Wakana, inviting him to the beach. But as they idly stand on the shore, a bird takes Marin's burger, and even after moving to another spot, the bird is still following them. Since the bird is after their fries, Wakana swings his hand and throws the food to the bird, who immediately flies away after taking the bag of fries. Marin laughs, and as they decide to settle on a spot, Wakana hands his remaining burger to Marine, who insists that he should take the half. Marin rushes to the sea and starts playing with some seaweeds, but she unconsciously reveals her underwear to Wakana, who realizes how free-spirited Marin is. Due to Marin's influence, Wakana finally decides to join the young lady, expressing that this is his first time in a beach and happily plays with her in the cold seawater. Marin realizes that Wakana hasn't been anywhere much and invites him to enjoy summer break together. After hearing this, Wakana agrees immediately, which makes Marin blush as she goes back to their spot. While sitting, Marin captures a photo of Wakana, who is amazed by the scenery. Wakana and Marin wrap up their shopping errands and arrive at the Wakana residence when she suddenly shows her newly bought swimsuit to Wakana. Even though he had enough of Marin's obliviousness, Wakana still cannot get used to her carefree personality. Marin proceeds to show off her brassiere but finally becomes embarrassed as she realizes that she is wearing a different brassiere. Inui is stunned to see her perfectly made costume and praises Wakana's sewing skills. Upon hearing Inui's veteran comments about the costume, Marin, who also has her costume tailored, tries her best to compliment Wakana, but her knowledge about garments is just not there. After seeing that Marin only has a limited color palette of foundations, Inui immediately recommends some colors that might actually look good on Marin's complexion, and Wakana uses a cosplay tape to alter her eye shape for the first time. After Marin sees her face in the mirror dressed as the anime character named Lobelia, her excitement for their upcoming cosplay collaboration spikes, but those emotions are immediately spoiled as the weather suddenly turns cloudy. Inui compliments Marin's costume and takes a photo together, which melts Marin's heart, but as Wakana and Shinju arrive, Marin and Inui are immediately mesmerized by Shinju's looks. Few days ago, when Inui collapsed in the abandoned hospital, she was immediately brought to the nearest hospital, and after parting ways, Shinju reminisced about a moment alone with Wakana, who reminded her of her desire to cosplay. Shinju admits that she's been dreaming of cosplaying with her sister, but her insecurities over Inui and with the other cosplayers are overcoming her courage. With this, Wakana offers to create a costume for Shinju's desired character, which turned out to be Soma, a male character from the same series that Shion and Lobelia are. Wakana immediately assures Shinju that he'll find a way to come up with the needed expenses for her costume, knowing that despite Shinju's mature appearance, she's still a middle schooler and her only source of funds is her allowance. Wakana lends his uniform to Shinju as it looks identical to Soma's attire, but her huge chest poses them another challenge as the uniform's buttons unbuckles themselves. Wakana sews his uniform's buttons back and thinks about using a sarashi wrap, which could alter Shinju's chest. After wearing a sarashi, Shinju still cannot achieve a man's form because her chest size is still peaking. Wakana immediately looks it up on the internet and discovers a chest flattener that is actually sold cheaply. Next, Wakana measures Shinju's head to come up with her wig's right size, but ends up being embarrassed after her chest bumps on him. Lastly, Wakana shows Shinju's wig, aiming to trim it according to Soma's hair length, but the fear in messing up their single wig suddenly make Wakana hesitate. He reminisces about his experiences with Marin and his first impression that Marin can do anything. However, after spending time with Marin, Wakana realized that nobody is perfect, and everyone has something they cannot do. While listening, Shinju reminisces about her sister, and wonders what Inui cannot do as Wakana starts fixing her makeup. Shinju embarrassedly shows herself in front of Marin and Inui, who both immediately fill Shinju with praise and take a picture together. The photo shoot commences, and after Marin tries to recreate a scene from the anime, Inui suddenly blushes with Marin's ability to act exactly like Lobelia, which eventually turns awkward after Marin cannot hide her smiling face when facing Inui, her idol. After Inui's turn to get photographed ends, she approaches Wakana to thank him for helping Shinju cosplay her favorite character. And after hearing Wakana's warm words, Inui cannot help but admire how wonderful his personality is. The next in line is Marin, who skillfully portrayed Lobelia, but due to Shinju's messy movements as a photographer, her chest holder snaps, creating chaos in their studio. In their residence, while Shinju is looking at her shots, Inui confronts her little sister for her insecurities and admits that Inui herself is insecure that Shinju has a nicer figure than her despite being young. Inui and Shinju open up their hearts to each other, and Inui declares that working all together with Wakana and Marin was fun, and having another collaboration with them is something Inui will look forward to. On the other hand, Marin immediately contacts Wakana, praising his skills for making their cosplay perfect, but as soon as Marin heard that he and Shinju spent time together, Marin immediately felt jealous. Days went by, and after watching an anime together, Marin decides to cosplay the main character named Veronica. The character's attire is an easy task for Wakana, but Veronica's tan complexion is a bit of a challenge to achieve. However, Marin suddenly arrives in Wakana's home, joking that she had her whole body tanned, making him worried, but Marin reveals that she only put a foundation in her body. Since Marin is sweating buckets, she decides to take a bath and teases Wakana as he tries to offer Marin his spare shirt. Seeing that Marin actually wears the shirt, Wakana cannot hide his joy as he watches Marin, who's comfortably sitting in front of him. Marin shows her newly bought chains, a wallpaper to recreate Veronica's prison, and puts on the fake teeth that Wakana created. Marin carelessly lifts her shirt, trying to put some body oil and imitate Veronica's underboob, but the embarrassing sight blows Wakana's mind, and instead of helping him, Marin stumbles after forgetting that she's wearing a chain on her feet. The next day, Marin takes Wakana to shop for his new clothes, but after trying out several outfits, everything just doesn't seem right for Wakana, who's used to wearing his normal and comfortable clothes, while Marin loves every outfit he tries. Marin takes a similar shirt for her and Wakana, And after trying some other outfits, the two decide to visit other shops to fill their stomachs and explore places. On their way home, Wakana states that he could not accompany Marin on their next cosplay because her next outfit barely covers her chest, and Wakana could not dare to look at it. After hearing Wakana's reasoning, Marin laughs, and as they commence forward, Marin whispers in his ear, teasing him if he wants a picture of her wearing Veronica's outfit, and those words left Wakana with a blushing face. Marin and Wakana's next stop is a manga cafe, but being in such a private space for the first time and getting too close with Marin makes him uneasy. However, the sudden shock after seeing that Marin is about to order a bunker's meal eases Wakana's stiffness. Marin shows him one of her favorite manga characters, but states that she cannot cosplay a character known as Liz because she is cute, and Marin isn't sure if she'll look great if she cosplays a cute succubus character like Liz. While reading the manga, Marin sets out to get some food, and Wakana realizes that, unlike an anime or a game, reading a manga for reference is hard because the character's attire is not drawn in detail. The next day, Wakana remembers his grandfather as he nervously sits on a couch after Marin takes him to a love hotel for their photo shoot for Marin's cosplay. Seeing that Wakana is embarrassed, Marin tries to tease him by inviting him to take a bath with her, which Wakana refuses without hesitation. As Wakana stiffly sits on a couch and waits for Marin to finish her bath, he opens the television, but being inside a love hotel, Wakana didn't expect to see an erotic show coming and sulks now that instead of easing his nervousness, the show makes it worse. Marin finally shows up, adoring the outfit that Wakana made after researching a lot about succubus on the internet and inclining their outfits with Liz's cute appearance. Marin continues to fool around and even takes the hotel's free condoms and hands one to Wakana as a financial charm. After some preparations, Marin pouts after Wakana compliments the vibrant color of her wig, despite Marin expecting him to compliment her overall appearance. Wakana brings some props to spruce up their cosplay and proceeds to take Marin's photos. Finally, they are about to take the last shot, where Marin will recreate a scene from the manga where Liz is singing a lullaby to put the male character to sleep. After trying a shot, Wakana decides that an angle from the male character's point of view would be better. Wakana lays on the comfy bed, kindly asking Marin to sit on his stomach. After seeing the shot, Marin is amazed and immediately expresses how much she's enjoying herself while Wakana happily watches her. A sudden moan from the next room ruins the mood and arouses Wakana, who immediately tries to take Marin away from his stomach, but out of shock, Marin accidentally throws her phone to the light switch, and the ambiance as Marin sits on Wakana's top while the lights are off almost lead them into something explicit, but the hotel's front desk calls, reminding them that their time is almost over. The two awkwardly go home, and even after Wakana arrives at their residence, he still cannot get over what almost happened between him and Marin. While making Hina dolls, Wakana suddenly receives an SOS message from Marin, which immediately makes him nervous, but everything went well after knowing that Marin is only having trouble with her assignments. While Wakana is making Marin's headdress, she begins to rant about her father, who canceled their plan to go to the festival. Wakana discovers that Marin's part-time gig is actually being a model, and looking at the magazine, he is amazed at how Marin looks so different in person. Marin decides to take a break and plays a horror movie on the television, saying that it's not that scary, but shows the opposite trait as she tries her best to look brave while Wakana is focusing on the movie. When the movie ends, Wakana is too amazed by the ghost's makeup and even rewinds some scenes. After finishing her assignments, Marin finds out that she forgot her mathematics lecture in their classroom and immediately heads to their school with Wakana. After getting her notes, Wakana invites Marin to have dinner at their place, but the huge pool catches Marin's attention, and she purposely drops herself on the water, despite how Wakana tried to stop her. After Wakana saved Marin from almost dying, she reveals that she can't swim, and recalls that her recent beach trip with her friends was still fun because of the delicious foods and their silly chats, despite not knowing how to swim. Wakana states that he is under the same circumstances as Marin when it comes to Hina dolls because he cannot make a doll's face perfectly, despite how he loves crafting them. When sundown arrives, Wakana receives a message from Marin saying that she has finished her assignments and they can proceed to the festival. Wakana's grandfather sends him off with a smile, and as he arrives at their meeting spot, the beautiful sight of Marin wearing a yukata enthralled him. After seeing Wakana's blushing face, Marin teases him, and excitedly proceeds to try different delicacies in every booth. Wakana carries everything in his hand, and the announcement that the fireworks are about to commence brings a magical vibe between Marin and Wakana, who have been through a lot together recently. Wakana recalls his past life as an introvert and a shut-in, which immediately alters after meeting Marin. While Wakana is looking at Marin, who's still dazzled by the fireworks, Marin lightens up the atmosphere after showing her tongue to Wakana, which has been dyed blue due to her food. After all the walking they did, Marin's feet starts to hurt and decides to take off her shoes. Wakana volunteers to carry her on his back, which Marin didn't refuse, and as they go home, Marin promises that she would be careful next year and will wear a comfortable pair of shoes to avoid spoiling the mood, while Wakana smiles after hearing that Marin is planning to spend another year with him. After their vacation, another academic year will commence the next day, but Marin ends up watching the sequel to the horror movie that she previously watched with Wakana, thinking that she'd get through the movie without getting scared, but the latter turns out to be the opposite, so she calls Wakana to at least accompany her through a phone call as she can't sleep. When Wakana finally falls asleep, Marin states her hidden feelings for him before turning